Eiran Cashin to Brighton certainly looks as if it is getting closer for Derby County and for Eiran Cashin in a deal which looks to take Eiran Cashin up to the Premier League. Is it something which Derby County can stop, and is it the right thing for the club to do? Now, time and time again we've spoke about budgets on this channel and across the course of the Derby County fan base, and for me the big conception has always been that David Clowes does not have the money to fund Derby County's real build, does not have the funds to get rid of Paul Warne, and all of these things all link in together. If we can get up to £10 million with add-ons and potential sell-on fees for Eiran Cashin, then I absolutely believe it is the right deal to make. For me personally, I'd want upwards of £15 million, but I understand that that isn't necessarily a possibility, although Derby County are the club in the offing when it comes to negotiations here. We have the final say. Of course, he's our player and recently signed a contract extension until 2027. Now, obviously, Eiran Cashin is a wonderful player and a brilliant defender for Derby County across the course of his time since moving up from the academy in a season where he nearly didn't have a contract at the club. Now, for me, the big question has to really be is, can Eiran Cashin carry this club on his back to keep us in the league? And in my opinion, the answer to that question is no. Yes, Eiran Cashin can help us in a defensive standpoint, but ultimately, when those players around him aren't supplied good enough, according to Paul Warne, then ultimately his extra ability won't earn us enough points on its own to take Derby to that next level. Now, obviously, we've spoke time and time again about Paul Warne and his future, and a lot of people talk about that, and this links into Eiran Cashin's potential deal. Derby County reportedly cannot afford to sack Paul Warne. If that is the case, then in my opinion, David Clowes isn't the great businessman people think he is, but also it opens up the door for this Eiran Cashin transfer. If we can get 8 to 10 million up front for Eiran Cashin and then be able to replace the manager, bring in some new players, which all can be done without a manager in charge, by the way, then why is that a bad thing? Derby County have seen time and time again this season that Paul Warne isn't up to the capabilities of this division, whether that be with Eiran Cashin in the team or not. So, for me, there's a lot of talking points for this Eiran Cashin deal, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad one. I think Eiran Cashin is a great player. I think he will get better, and I do think eventually he'll be a Premier League centre-half, but I don't think he'll ever be anything more than a bottom-half Premier League centre-half. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but obviously that is much above the level we're at. Now, Eiran Cashin didn't move to Brighton 12 to 18 months ago when they first came in with 4 million plus a loan back, and that was while he was in League One with 9 months or so left on his contract. And for me, that is why this deal has to be at least double what that initial fee was, because we now have that contract protection until 2027. And even if Eiran Cashin throws in the dummy and doesn't want to play, which I think is a potential possibility over the course of the next few weeks, then we have that situation on our hands where whatever value we're potentially getting now is then going to completely change. Because as soon as a player turns around and says, I don't want to play for the club, or I don't want to play for this manager, then ultimately their value goes from, say, potentially 150% based on the contract all the way down to 45-50%, because you look at, as soon as you say you don't want to be at a club, then it's on that club to sell rather than for a club to come in and negotiate to buy. And unless you've got a bidding war going on, there's absolutely no way that you can control that narrative or the price put on the player. Ultimately, you can say no and keep the player at the club, but there's no guarantees that the player's going to want to stay. So you have all these things to think about, and even if the player does stay and rots in the reserves, you're then wasting a wage on a player who doesn't want to be there and isn't going to play. So you have these consistent battles, consistent thoughts that go on because of this situation. Now, for me, I said it a few days ago in a short video, and I said it, I think it was in the Sunderland match day vlog, which I did, that I'm not opposed to letting Cashin go, because ultimately I believe that Derby County need money to go forwards. Now, if you look at the signs of Oscar Frullo, you look at the potential signs of Matt Clark, you look at the players we've looked at across the course of this window, Richard Kone, Sam Smith, Harvey Nibbs, they all require a monetary push. Derby County do not seem to have that monetary push. Yes, we've bought in Lars Jørgen Selverson. We'll probably get an announcement on Matt Clark over the course of the next 24 hours because they're going to try and settle down the debates that are going on currently around Paul Warne. But for me, that doesn't necessarily mean that Derby County are going to suddenly become a mid-table club. I think there's a lot that goes into being a Championship survival team, and I don't think we have that. With Eiran Cashin going, I think we can potentially build into that. Obviously, though, the big question has to be is, will he be at Derby County for this upcoming game at the weekend, which I believe is Sheffield United at home? I'll just check to make sure. But is he going to be at the club for that game? In my opinion, probably he won't be. I believe the transfer window closes on the 3rd of February. So obviously we'll keep across it on the channel, but it's one of those for me where I just can't see a world where Eiran Cashin makes it through this next week. Given the way he acted after the away fixture, some of you will have seen it, some of you won't. If I can find the picture again, I'll make sure to put it on screen. But apparently he was clapping and essentially embracing the fans for a good few minutes after the game. It was spoke about on Radio Derby, and obviously that then opens the door to a player who ultimately is probably one of the best players in this squad leaving. And as it stands right now, our replacement looks like it's going to be Matt Clark, but then we're still left in a situation where we don't have enough in the back four or back three to be able to actually have a proper back three. So it's really difficult. Really, really difficult. I personally, if we want to get into opinions and things like that, I think letting Cashin go for maybe 8 to 10 million up front and add-ons up to 15 with a potential sell-on is an absolutely perfect deal. However, I don't believe Brighton are going to pay that money. But I do believe we have to get rid of him in this window, because it's not a case of Eiran Cashin is too good for Derby County and needs to leave, or Eiran Cashin doesn't want to play for Derby County so he must leave. It's more a case of, if we're going to go down, the say 8 million they're offering now is going to go straight back down to that 4 or 5 million pounds. And then we're in a position again where we're going to lose players like Kane Wilson. We'll probably lose Ryan Niambi. Losing Cashin as well. You then go to the midfield. Blackett Taylor will probably want to go. Obviously, Kenzo will probably want to go. Ibu Adams will probably want to go. You look at the forward line, and realistically, we've got an ageing Mendes Lang, ageing Barkhuizen, ageing Caden Jackson. We're not going to have players who are going to be able to fulfill a League One season, so we're going to need that money in the door. Now, ultimately, we can start that rebuild now if we let Cashin go, and that is where my opinion stands on this, because we're going to need to rebuild this squad, whether it be for a Championship next season or for League One, and we do have a ton of players out of contract. Obviously, the likes of Forsyth, Wilson, I think Vickers might be out of contract this season. Obviously, you then go to the I think Jake Rooney might be as well. You obviously then look in the midfield, where you've got players out of contract with the likes of Liam Thompson and things like that. So you're opening that door to literally a whole squad rebuild over the summer with no funds. And this is why it's so important that Derby County get a manager who has Championship know-how to be able to rebuild this squad, whether it be now or in 6 months' time. Because if you want to stay in this division, you need Championship know-how, you need a Championship reputation, and Paul Warne does not have that. You've seen it with the teams in this division that have changed manager to Championship know-how. They've all got better. You even... Plymouth didn't go to Championship know-how, and they've not necessarily got better. We don't have Championship know-how, we're going backwards. Portsmouth, they've got their own budgetary issues as well, but also lack of Championship know-how in the dugout. And these are things that need to be discussed. And when it comes to Eiran Cashin, will he still be at the club this weekend? Will he still be at the club come the transfer deadline? In my opinion, the answer to that question is no. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, hit the like button if you have not done so already, and I'll catch you in my next video.